Emma didn't know that the man standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows was the most powerful werewolf in the Northern Territories. She didn't know that he'd been searching for her for 3 centuries, and she certainly didn't know that the moment she stepped into what she thought was the wrong room, she just walked into her destiny. All Emma knew was that her feet were killing her. She'd been working for 14 hours straight, and she desperately needed to find the staff break room before her legs gave out completely. The exclusive gathering at the Blackthorn estate was the kind of event that paid triple overtime if she could survive it. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, and guests who probably spent more on their shoes than she made in a month. Down the hall, 3rd door on the left, Marcus from the kitchen had said, barely looking up from his prep station. Can't miss it. But Emma was starting to think she'd missed something, because this definitely wasn't a break room. The door had been slightly ajar, warm golden light spilling into the darkened hallway, and she'd pushed inside without thinking. Now she stood frozen in what was clearly someone's private study, her catering uniform feeling impossibly shabby against the rich mahogany and leather that surrounded her. The man at the window hadn't turned around yet. Tall, impossibly broad shoulders, filling out a perfectly tailored black suit. Dark hair that looked like he'd run his fingers through it. Everything about his posture screamed power and control, from the way he held his head to the casual confidence of his stance. This was someone important. Someone who definitely shouldn't be interrupted by exhausted catering staff who couldn't follow simple directions. Emma took a careful step backward, praying the expensive hardwood wouldn't creak and give her away. She could slip out, find the actual break room, pretend this never happened. Her hand found the door handle behind her. "Don't!" The single word stopped her cold. His voice was deep, rough around the edges, with an authority that made her bones go liquid. Still he didn't turn around, but somehow she knew he was completely aware of her presence. Had probably known the moment she'd opened the door. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I was looking for the break room. Marcus said 3rd door, but I must have miscounted, and I—" "Emma." Her name on his lips made something impossible happen in her chest. A warmth that started somewhere behind her ribs and spread outward like honey in her veins. She'd never heard her name said like that before, like it was precious, like it meant something, but that was impossible, because she'd never met this man in her life. "How do you—" she started, then stopped. Her breath caught as he finally turned around. Devastating didn't begin to cover it. High cheekbones that could cut glass, a jaw that belonged on ancient marble statues, and eyes, God, his eyes, amber like liquid gold, with an intensity that seemed to see straight through her. Not just beautiful, but predatory, dangerous. The kind of man who commanded attention simply by existing. And he was looking at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking his entire life. "Emma Catherine Morrison," he said, taking a single step toward her. "Born October 13th, 26 years ago. You work 3 jobs. Catering, morning shift at Morrison's Diner, weekend cleaning for the apartment complex on 5th Street. You live alone in a studio apartment, building 42C, Unit 7. You take your coffee black because cream is an unnecessary expense. You haven't spoken to another person about anything deeper than the weather in over 2 months. The warmth in her chest turned to ice. "Who are you?" Her hand tightened on the door handle. "How do you know those things?" Instead of answering, he took another step closer, moving with fluid grace that reminded her of something wild, something that hunted. "You feel it, don't you?" His voice dropped to something barely above a whisper. "The pull between us, like a golden thread connecting your heart to mine." Emma's breath hitched, because yes, she did feel it, had felt it the moment he'd spoken her name. An impossible connection that made no sense, a warmth that had nothing to do with the fireplace crackling softly in the corner. Her logical mind screamed that this was insane, that she should run, but her body seemed rooted to the spot. "I don't understand," she whispered. "You don't need to. Not yet." He stopped just out of arm's reach, close enough that she could see the flecks of darker gold in his incredible eyes. "But I need you to know something, Emma. You walking through that door wasn't a mistake. You weren't looking for the break room, you were looking for me." "That's impossible. I don't even know who you are." Something that might have been a smile ghosted across his lips. Kieran Blackthorne. He said it like she should recognize the name, like it should mean something significant. When her expression remained blank, he continued. "And you, Emma Morrison, are the woman I've been waiting for my entire life." The golden thread sensation pulsed stronger, like her heart was trying to reach for his across the space between them. Emma pressed her back against the door, fighting the impossible pull that wanted her to move closer to this stranger who somehow knew everything about her empty, invisible life. "This is crazy," she breathed. "You're crazy. I should go." "Yes," Kieran agreed quietly. "You should. You should walk out that door, finish your shift, go home to your empty apartment and pretend this never happened. You should keep living your careful small life where no one sees you, no one knows you exist." Each word hit like a physical blow because they were true, completely, devastatingly true. She was invisible, forgettable, just another face in the crowd, another body to fill space and serve drinks and disappear when the work was done. "But if you stay," Kieran continued, his voice gentle now, understanding, "I'll show you what it feels like to be seen, to be known, to be precious to someone." Precious. When was the last time anyone had called her precious? When was the last time anyone had called her anything at all? Emma's hand trembled on the door handle. "I was looking for the break room," she repeated weakly, like saying it again would make this whole impossible situation make sense. "Wrong room, sorry," Kieran said softly, echoing her earlier words. Then his amber eyes caught hers and held them with devastating certainty. She turned to leave, but no. Right room. Finally. The warmth in her chest blazed brighter, and for the first time in her 26 years of existence, Emma Catherine Morrison felt like she might actually matter to someone, like she might be exactly where she was supposed to be, even if she didn't understand how that was possible. Emma stared at Kieran Blackthorne like he'd just told her he was the king of Mars, which honestly would have been more believable than whatever this was supposed to be. "Kieran Blackthorne," she repeated slowly, testing the name on her tongue. It felt familiar somehow, like something she should remember but couldn't quite place. "Should I know that name?" "Not yet," he said, amusement flickering in those impossible amber eyes. "But you will." That wasn't ominous at all. Emma's practical mind kicked into overdrive, cataloguing exit strategies and wondering if there were security cameras in this room. Rich men who knew way too much about random catering staff were not typically the good guys in any story that ended well. "Look, Mr. Blackthorne, I appreciate whatever this is supposed to be, but I really need to get back to work. My supervisor will be looking for me, and I can't afford to lose this job." She turned toward the door again, but his voice stopped her. "Emma?" Just her name, but something in the way he said it made her pause, not commanding this time, but almost sad. "Please, give me 5 minutes to explain." Against every instinct screaming at her to run, she found herself turning back around. Maybe it was the note of vulnerability in his voice, or maybe it was the way her chest still felt warm and connected whenever he looked at her. Either way, she was apparently insane. 5 minutes, she said firmly. "Then I'm leaving." Kieran nodded, as if that was perfectly reasonable. He moved to one of the leather chairs near the fireplace, gesturing to the one across from it. "Will you sit?" Emma remained standing, arms crossed. She wasn't getting comfortable with this stranger, no matter how her traitorous body responded to his presence. Fair enough. Kieran settled into his chair with fluid grace, completely at ease despite her obvious hostility. "What do you know about werewolves, Emma?" She blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "Werewolves, shapeshifters, supernatural beings who can take both human and wolf form." You mean like in movies, fictional creatures that don't exist in the real world? Not fictional. His eyes caught the firelight, and for just a moment Emma could have sworn they flashed brighter, more gold than amber, with an inner light that had nothing to do with reflected flame. Very real, and I'm their king. Emma felt a laugh bubble up in her chest, part hysteria and part disbelief. OK, you're the king of the werewolves. Got it. And I suppose next you're going to tell me you turn into a giant wolf under the full moon? Actually, we can shift at will. Moon phases are more of a Hollywood invention. Kieran's voice remained perfectly calm, like they were discussing the weather. Though the full moon does make us stronger. This is insane. Emma ran her hands through her hair, dislodging the neat ponytail she'd managed that morning. You're insane. I'm standing in a stranger's office listening to werewolf folklore like it's a perfectly normal Tuesday evening. Not folklore. Kieran leaned forward slightly, his intensity pinning her in place. Emma, I can prove it to you, but first, I need you to understand what you are to me. A confused catering worker who stumbled into the wrong room? My mate. The word hit her like a physical blow. Not girlfriend, not love interest, mate, like she was an animal, like they both were. That's not how humans work, she said weakly. You're not entirely human. Emma felt the blood drain from her face. What are you talking about? Kieran's expression softened, becoming gentle in a way that made her chest ache. Your grandmother, Elena Morrison. She was part of a pack in the mountains of Colorado before she met your grandfather and chose a human life. The supernatural genetics skip generations sometimes. You carry just enough of her bloodline to recognise the mate bond, even if you can't shift yourself. My grandmother died when I was 12. She never mentioned anything about... Emma gestured vaguely at him. About any of this. Because she wanted to protect you, keep you safe in the human world. Kieran stood slowly, careful not to make any sudden movements that might spook her. But the bond doesn't care about what world you were raised in, Emma. It only cares that we're meant to be together. Meant to be together. Emma's voice came out flat, disbelieving. You don't even know me. I know you work 3 jobs because you refuse to accept charity from anyone. I know you give half your tips to Mrs. Chen next door because her social security doesn't cover her medications. I know you haven't bought new clothes in 2 years because you'd rather eat than look fashionable. I know you fall asleep reading library books because you can't afford cable, and you dream about travelling somewhere warm where no one knows your name. Each detail felt like he was reading from her private journal. How could he possibly know those things? I know you're brave, Kieran continued, his voice dropping to something softer. Braver than you realise. You've survived completely alone since you were 18, built a life with nothing but determination and stubbornness. You think you're invisible, but you're wrong. You're extraordinary. The warmth in her chest blazed brighter, like recognition, like coming home. Emma pressed her hand to her sternum, trying to understand what was happening to her body. This feeling, she whispered, this connection thing, is it real, or are you doing something to me? It's real. It's the mate bond recognising itself. Kieran took a careful step closer. I can't force it, Emma. I can't create it or manipulate it. It simply is. But how do I know? How do I know you're not just some rich stalker who did research on me? Instead of answering with words, Kieran closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened them again, they weren't amber anymore. They were pure gold, glowing with an inner light that was impossible to fake. At the same time, the air around him seemed to thicken with power, pressing against Emma's skin like a warm current. She stumbled backward, her rational mind finally accepting what her instincts had been trying to tell her. This wasn't human. Whatever Kieran Blackthorne was, he wasn't entirely human. Alpha King of the Northern Territories, he said quietly, his eyes slowly fading back to amber, ruler of 47 packs, protector of nearly 10,000 werewolves, and for 300 years incomplete. 300 years? Emma's voice came out as a squeak. "We live longer than humans, much longer. I've been searching for my mate since I reached maturity, following every lead, chasing every possibility. And tonight you walked into my study like you belonged here." "I was looking for the break room," Emma repeated numbly. "Were you?" Kieran tilted his head, studying her. "Or did something deeper guide you here? Did you feel drawn to this door specifically?" Emma opened her mouth to deny it, then stopped, because now that he mentioned it, she had felt drawn to this particular door. The others in the hallway had been closed tight, uninviting, but this one had been cracked open, light spilling out like an invitation, like it was calling to her. "I don't understand any of this," she whispered. "I know." Kieran's voice was infinitely patient. "And I'm not asking you to accept it all at once. I'm simply asking you to stay. Let me explain. Let me show you what this could mean." "And if I say no?" "Then you walk out that door with my protection, and I'll never contact you again. Your choice, Emma. It's always your choice." Emma looked at this impossible man who claimed to be a werewolf king, who somehow knew intimate details about her boring, invisible life, who looked at her like she hung the moon and stars. Every logical part of her brain screamed to run. But the warmth in her chest, the golden thread sensation that seemed to connect her heart to his, whispered something different. What if this was real? What if she really was meant for something more than working 3 jobs and falling asleep alone every night? What if someone actually saw her, valued her, wanted her to stay? "Oh, 5 more minutes," she heard herself saying. "Explain everything. Start from the beginning." Kieran's smile was devastating, relief and joy and something deeper flooding his expression. "Thank you." And despite every rational thought in her head, Emma found herself believing that maybe, just maybe, walking into the wrong room had been the rightest thing she'd ever done. 2 hours later, Emma's world had been completely turned upside down. She sat curled in the oversized leather chair, a cup of tea growing cold in her hands, while Kieran patiently explained the supernatural world that had apparently existed alongside humanity for millennia. Pack hierarchies, territorial boundaries, the delicate balance between wolves and humans. Her rational mind struggled to process it all, but the warmth in her chest, that impossible golden thread connecting her to this man, made it easier to believe than it should have been. "So you're telling me there are thousands of werewolves living normal lives, working regular jobs, paying taxes, going to PTA meetings?" Emma shook her head in wonder. "My pack includes a pediatric surgeon, 3 teachers, a software engineer, and a woman who runs the most popular bakery in downtown Portland." Kieran smiled, the expression transforming his intimidating features into something almost boyish. "We're not the monsters Hollywood makes us out to be." "But you're their king." "Alpha king," he corrected gently. "And yes, I lead them, protect them, make the hard decisions when pack conflicts arise." Something darker flickered in his expression. "It's not always easy." Emma set down her tea, studying his face. For the first time since she'd stumbled into this room, she saw past the supernatural power and devastating good looks to the man underneath. There were lines around his eyes that spoke of too little sleep, a tightness in his jaw that suggested the weight of constant responsibility. "You look tired," she said softly. Kieran's eyes snapped to hers, surprise flickering across his features like he wasn't used to anyone noticing such things. "Leading 10,000 people tends to be exhausting. 10,000 people who depend on you for everything." Emma's heart clenched unexpectedly. She knew what it felt like to carry more than you could handle, to push through exhaustion because people were counting on you. "That's a lot of pressure." "It is." His voice was quiet, vulnerable in a way that made something deep in her chest respond. "I've been doing it alone for so long, I'd almost forgotten what it might feel like to have someone who understood." The golden thread between them pulsed stronger, and Emma found herself leaning forward without conscious thought. "How long have you been in charge?" 200 years since my father was killed defending pack territory from hunters. Emma's breath caught. Hunters? Humans who know about our existence and believe we're abominations that need to be destroyed. Kieran's expression hardened. They're rare, but dangerous. My father died protecting our people from a coordinated attack. You were just a child, 100 years old, young for our kind, but old enough to fight. Kieran's gaze grew distant. Old enough to watch him die and know I had to step up or our entire pack would fall apart. Without thinking, Emma reached out and touched his hand where it rested on the chair arm. The moment her fingers made contact with his skin, electricity shot up her arm and that golden warmth blazed brighter. But more than the supernatural connection, she felt his grief. Raw and old, but still sharp around the edges. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Kieran stared down at their joined hands like he couldn't quite believe she was touching him voluntarily. "You don't need to apologize." "Yes, I do. No one should have to grow up that fast." Emma's throat tightened thinking about it. No one should have to carry that much responsibility alone. Something cracked open in Kieran's expression, vulnerability bleeding through his careful control. "Emma, what about your mother? Other family?" "My mother died when I was 50. Illness that human medicine couldn't cure and our natural healing abilities couldn't fight." His thumb traced over her knuckles, the touch sending shivers through her entire body. "I've been alone for a very long time." Alone. The word echoed in Emma's chest because she understood it completely. She'd been alone since she was 18, working multiple jobs just to survive, watching other people build lives and families while she remained invisible on the sidelines. "So have I," she admitted quietly. Kieran's golden eyes found hers, and the connection between them blazed hotter. Not just physical attraction, but recognition, understanding. Two people who'd spent their lives taking care of everyone else, with no one to take care of them. "Tell me," he said softly. "Tell me about your life, the real version, not the statistics I already know." Emma hesitated. She wasn't used to talking about herself, wasn't used to anyone actually wanting to know. But something in Kieran's expression made her feel safe, made her want to be honest. "My parents died in a car accident when I was 18, she began slowly. "I was supposed to start college that fall, had scholarships lined up. Instead, I got 3 jobs to pay for the funeral and keep our apartment until I could figure out what to do next." "And you never made it to college?" "No. By the time I'd saved enough to consider it, I was 23 and felt too old to start, too far behind everyone else." Emma looked down at their joined hands, amazed that she was telling this story to someone who actually seemed to care about the answer. "I kept telling myself it was temporary, that I'd figure out a plan, but years passed, and I just existed." "You survived? That's not the same as just existing." "It felt the same most days." Emma's voice grew smaller. "Wake up, work, sleep, repeat. No friends because I was always working. No relationships because who wants to date someone with no time and no money? I felt like a ghost moving through other people's lives." Kieran's hand tightened on hers. "You're not a ghost, Emma. You're real, and you're here, and you matter." The words hit her like a physical blow because she couldn't remember the last time anyone had said anything like that to her. Hell, she couldn't remember the last time anyone had said her name with such certainty, such warmth. "I don't know how to believe that," she whispered. "Then let me show you." Kieran lifted their joined hands and pressed a soft kiss to her knuckles. The touch was gentle, reverent, but it sent fire racing through her veins. "Let me prove to you how precious you are." Emma's breath caught. The golden thread between them was pulling tighter, making it hard to think about anything except how right this felt, how safe, how wanted. Then Kieran's phone buzzed loudly against the side table, shattering the intimate moment. He glanced at the screen and his entire demeanour changed. The soft, vulnerable man disappeared, replaced by someone sharp and dangerous. "I'm sorry, I have to take this. Emma nodded, pulling her hand back and immediately missing the connection. Kieran answered the call with a curt, "What is it?" She couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but she could see Kieran's jaw tighten with each word, his free hand clenched into a fist, and those golden eyes flashed with something that looked distinctly predatory. "When?" he demanded. Then, after a pause, "How many witnesses?" A chill ran down Emma's spine. Whatever this was about, it wasn't good. "No," Kieran said sharply. "Absolutely not. We handle this internally." Another pause. "Because if we let him think he can challenge my authority publicly, every ambitious alpha in the territory will follow suit." Challenge his authority? Emma's stomach dropped as she realised this phone call was about pack business. Dangerous pack business that reminded her exactly what Kieran was. Not just a lonely man who understood her pain, but the king of a species she was only just learning existed. "I'll be there in an hour," Kieran said finally. "Make sure he doesn't leave the territory until I arrive." He hung up and looked at Emma, regret clear in his expression. "I'm sorry, there's a situation I have to handle." "Situation?" Emma's voice came out smaller than she intended. "A young alpha from one of my border packs is making noise about some of my recent decisions. Specifically—" Kieran hesitated, then seemed to decide on honesty. "About the time I've been spending searching for my mate instead of focusing solely on pack politics." Emma felt like she'd been doused with ice water. "So this is my fault?" "No." Kieran's response was immediate and fierce. "This is Marcus Vale being an ambitious bastard who thinks he can use pack law to challenge my fitness to rule." Marcus Vale? Alpha of the Vale Pack. He's been positioning himself as my potential successor for decades. Kieran's expression darkened. He's also the one who's been spreading rumours that my continued unmated status makes me weak, that a king without a queen can't properly lead. Emma's chest tightened with something that felt suspiciously like fear. "And now that you've found me?" "Now he'll either back down or escalate." Kieran studied her face carefully. "Emma, I need you to understand something. The moment I claim you publicly as my mate, you become a target for anyone who wants to challenge my rule." "Target?" The word came out as barely a whisper. "I can protect you. My entire pack can protect you. But there would always be some level of danger." Kieran reached for her hand again, but Emma pulled back. "This is insane." She stood up abruptly, pacing toward the window. "A few hours ago I was worried about making rent. Now you're telling me that dating you comes with assassination attempts." "Mating," Kieran corrected quietly. "Not dating. And yes, it comes with risks." Emma spun around to face him. "Why are you telling me this? Why not just, I don't know, keep me in the dark until I was already in too deep to leave?" Kieran rose from his chair with fluid grace, but stayed where he was instead of moving closer. "Because you deserve the truth. Because I want you to choose this with full knowledge of what it means." "And if I choose to walk away?" Pain flashed across Kieran's features so quickly, Emma almost missed it. "Then I spend the rest of my very long life alone, knowing exactly what I lost." The golden thread in her chest ached at the thought of leaving, but her rational mind was screaming warnings, danger, assassination attempts, a world where she'd always be looking over her shoulder. But then she looked at Kieran, really looked at him, saw the loneliness he tried to hide, the burden of leadership he carried alone, the careful hope in his eyes that she might choose to stay despite the risks. When was the last time anyone had needed her, really needed her, not just her ability to serve drinks or clean rooms, but her specifically? "I need time to think," she said finally. Kieran nodded, though she could see the disappointment he tried to hide. "Of course, I'll have someone drive you home." "What about your pack emergency?" "It can wait another hour." His voice was firm, protective. "Making sure you get home safely is more important than dealing with Marcus Vale's posturing." Despite everything, the fear, the overwhelming information, the complete upheaval of her understanding of the world, Emma felt something warm unfurl in her chest at his words. When was the last time anyone had put her safety above their own urgent responsibilities? "Thank you," she said softly. Kieran's smile was small but genuine. "Emma, whatever you decide, I want you to know something. These past few hours, talking with you, seeing you, it's been the most alive I've felt in 2 centuries." The golden thread blazed brighter, and Emma knew with absolute certainty that whatever choice she made, it was going to change everything. Emma woke up in a bed that cost more than her monthly rent. For a moment she lay perfectly still, staring at the ceiling that was definitely not the water-stained drywall of her studio apartment. Cream-coloured silk curtains filtered golden morning light through windows that actually opened onto something other than a brick wall. The mattress beneath her was impossibly soft, the sheets smooth against her skin like expensive cotton instead of the scratchy discount linens she was used to. Then the memories crashed back. Kieran. Werewolves? Mate bonds? Marcus Vale? The choice she still hadn't made. A soft knock at the door made her sit up quickly, clutching the unfamiliar silk pyjamas someone had left for her. She didn't remember changing into them, but then again she barely remembered anything after Kieran had driven her home last night. He'd insisted on walking her to her door, checking every shadow like he expected threats to materialise from thin air. Then he'd ask quietly if she'd be safe alone, and something in his expression had made her realise that he genuinely feared for her well-being. "Come in," she called, her voice still rough with sleep. The door opened to reveal Kieran himself, carrying a breakfast tray that smelled like heaven. He was dressed casually in dark jeans and a grey sweater that clung to his broad shoulders, but even in everyday clothes he commanded attention. Those amber eyes found hers immediately, searching her face like he was trying to read her decision in her expression. "Good morning," he said softly. "I thought you might be hungry." "Where am I?" Emma asked, though part of her already knew. "My house. You collapsed in your apartment last night. Exhaustion, most likely. I couldn't leave you there alone." Kieran set the tray on the bedside table, careful to maintain distance. "I hope you don't mind. Nothing happened. You were completely safe." Emma's cheeks flushed as she realised she'd been so overwhelmed by everything that her body had simply shut down. "I don't usually collapse." "You don't usually discover that supernatural beings exist and that one of them wants to make you queen of 10,000 werewolves," Kieran pointed out gently. "Some shock is normal. Queen." The word hit her like ice water, reminding her of exactly how far out of her depth she truly was. "I made eggs Benedict," Kieran continued, his tone carefully neutral. "And there's fresh fruit, coffee, orange juice. I wasn't sure what you liked." The gesture was so thoughtful, so domestic, that Emma felt her chest tighten with unexpected emotion. When was the last time someone had made her breakfast? When was the last time someone had cared enough to try? "Thank you," she whispered. Kieran smiled, the expression transforming his severe features into something almost boyish. "I'll let you eat in peace. Take as much time as you need to think. There's no pressure, Emma." But before he could leave, voices erupted from somewhere downstairs, loud, angry voices that made Kieran's entire demeanour shift from gentle to predatory in an instant. "Stay here," he commanded, his voice carrying an authority that made her bones go liquid. "Don't come downstairs no matter what you hear." Then he was gone, moving with inhuman speed toward whatever confrontation was happening below. Emma sat frozen for exactly 30 seconds before her curiosity won out over self-preservation. She crept to the bedroom door and eased it open, straining to hear the conversation from the foyer. "Told you I'd handle this in my own time." Kieran's voice, cold as winter steel. "Your time?" A different voice, smoother but with an edge that made Emma's skin crawl. "It's been 3 days since you found her, Kieran. 3 days of keeping your supposed mate hidden away like some guilty secret. I'm protecting her. You're protecting yourself." The stranger's voice grew closer, like he was moving through the house. "Because you know she's a liability, A human woman with no understanding of our world, no training, no strength. She'll get herself killed within a month. Emma's blood went cold. They were talking about her. This had to be Marcus Vale, the challenger Kieran had mentioned. Emma is stronger than you think, Kieran replied, but there was a note of something in his voice. Doubt? Is she? Strong enough to handle an assassination attempt? Strong enough to make the hard choices that come with leadership? Strong enough to watch you sentence someone to death for betraying the pack? Each question hit like a physical blow because Emma knew the answers. No, she wasn't strong enough for any of that. She was barely strong enough to handle her normal human problems, let alone supernatural politics and life-or-death situations. She'll learn, Kieran said firmly. Will she? Or will she run the moment things get truly difficult? Marcus's voice was getting closer to the stairs. I've done my research, Kieran. Emma Catherine Morrison. 3 minimum-wage jobs. No family, no friends, no connections. She's a nobody who stumbled into something she can't handle. Emma pressed her hand to her chest, trying to ease the ache that was spreading there. Because Marcus wasn't wrong. She was nobody. She had stumbled into this and she was completely out of her depth. Careful, Marcus! Kieran's voice carried a warning that made the air itself feel dangerous. You're talking about my mate. Your supposed mate. Have you even told her about the mating ceremony, the blood binding, the fact that once she's truly claimed, she'll be tied to you for eternity with no possibility of escape? Emma's knees went weak. Blood binding. Eternity. No possibility of escape. Or maybe, Marcus continued, his tone turning sly, you're having second thoughts yourself. Maybe you realise that a weak human mate reflects poorly on your ability to lead, makes you look desperate. I'm not desperate. Aren't you? 300 years of searching, and you settle for the first woman who can feel the mate bond, even though she's completely unsuitable for the role? Completely unsuitable. The words echoed in Emma's head because they felt true. She was unsuitable. She had no idea how to be anyone's mate, let alone the queen of supernatural beings. She could barely manage her own life. Emma is perfect for me, Kieran said, but even from upstairs Emma could hear the slight hesitation in his voice. Perfect for you, maybe, but is she perfect for the pack, for the 10,000 wolves who would depend on her leadership, for the enemies who would target her to get to you? Emma sank down onto the floor beside the door, her heart pounding. Every question Marcus was asking was legitimate. Every concern was valid. She would be a target. She would be a weakness. She had no idea how to lead anyone, let alone thousands of supernatural beings. The pack will accept her, Kieran said. Will they? When they discover their future Luna can't even shift. When they realise she has no supernatural abilities whatsoever. When the first real threat comes and she crumbles under pressure. When she crumbles under pressure. Emma closed her eyes, remembering how she'd literally collapsed last night just from learning about werewolves. How would she handle real danger, real violence? She won't crumble. You can't know that. You've known her for 1 day, Kieran. 1 day, and you're ready to risk everything. Your leadership, your pack's safety, your people's lives, on a woman who might run at the first sign of trouble. Emma bit her lip to keep from making a sound, but tears were starting to burn her eyes. Because Marcus was right. She might run. Hell, she wanted to run right now. I think, Marcus continued, his voice turning gentle in a way that somehow sounded more threatening than his anger, you need to consider what's best for everyone involved, including Emma herself. What do you mean? I mean that keeping her in this world, asking her to take on responsibilities she's not equipped for, might be the cruelest thing you could do to her. She deserves a chance at a normal life, a safe life. Emma pressed her hand to her mouth, trying to muffle the sob that wanted to escape. Because that was the worst part. Marcus wasn't being cruel. He was being kind. He was thinking about her well-being in a way that Kieran, caught up in finally finding his mate, maybe wasn't. You're suggesting I let her go, Kieran said quietly. I'm suggesting you consider whether love sometimes means making the hard choice, even when it hurts." Silence stretched between them, and Emma found herself holding her breath, waiting for Kieran's response, waiting to hear whether he would choose her or his responsibilities. "She deserves the choice," Kieran said finally. "It's not my decision to make for her." "Even if she makes the wrong choice? Even if she chooses to stay out of some misguided sense of obligation and it gets her killed?" Emma couldn't listen any more. She crawled back to the bed on shaking legs, Marcus's words echoing in her head. Unsuitable, weak, a liability, someone who would crumble under pressure. He wasn't wrong. She was just a catering worker who'd stumbled into the wrong room. She had no business being anyone's queen, let alone the mate of the most powerful supernatural being in North America. She would get people killed. She would put Kieran in impossible positions. She would fail. But the golden thread in her chest ached at the thought of leaving. For one brief shining moment she'd felt wanted, precious, like she mattered to someone. Maybe Marcus was right about that too. Maybe love sometimes meant making the hard choice, even when it hurt. Emma looked down at the breakfast Kieran had made her with such care, at the silk pyjamas someone had dressed her in while she was unconscious, at the luxury that surrounded her like a beautiful cage. Then she thought about her studio apartment with its water stains and scratchy sheets, her 3 jobs and her invisible life, and the safety of being nobody special. For the first time in her life, someone wanted her. But maybe being wanted wasn't enough when it came with a cost this high. Maybe Marcus Vale was right. Maybe the kindest thing she could do for everyone, including herself, was disappear back into the ordinary world where she belonged. Emma had made it halfway down the back stairs when Kieran's voice stopped her cold. "Where are you going?" She turned to find him standing in the kitchen doorway, his amber eyes taking in her hastily thrown-on clothes and the small bag she'd packed with her few belongings. The breakfast tray sat forgotten on the counter behind him, and something in his expression told her he knew exactly what she'd decided. "Home," she said quietly. "Back to my real life." "Running away, you mean?" The words stung because they were true. She was running. But maybe running was the smart choice for once in her life. "I heard your conversation with Marcus," Emma admitted. "He's right, Kieran. I'm not cut out for this world. I'm not strong enough to be anyone's queen." Kieran's jaw tightened. "Marcus is a manipulative bastard who's been trying to undermine my authority for decades. You're going to let him drive you away?" "I'm going to be realistic." Emma clutched her bag tighter, using it like a shield between them. "I'm a nobody, Kieran, a catering worker with no family, no connections, no supernatural abilities. What possible good could I do as your mate? I'd just put everyone in danger." "You're not nobody." Kieran took a step toward her, his voice fierce. "You're everything, Emma. You're kind and brave and—" "I'm not brave!" The words exploded out of her, raw and desperate. "I collapsed last night just from learning werewolves exist. How am I supposed to handle assassination attempts, political intrigue, making life or death decisions for thousands of people?" "You'll learn." "What if I can't? What if Marcus is right and I crumble under pressure? What if my weakness gets people killed?" Kieran closed the distance between them in 2 strides, his hands framing her face with devastating gentleness. "Emma, listen to me. You are not weak. You've survived alone for 8 years. You work 3 jobs without complaining. You give away money you can't afford to help a neighbour. That's not weakness. That's strength." Despite everything, Emma felt her resolve wavering. The golden thread in her chest was pulling so hard it physically hurt to think about leaving. But then Marcus's words echoed in her mind. Unsuitable, liability, wrong choice. "It's not enough," she whispered. "Your people deserve better than someone who's going to fumble through learning how to be their leader. They deserve someone who knows what they're doing. They deserve someone who cares about them, someone with compassion and integrity." Kieran's thumbs traced her cheekbones, wiping away tears she didn't realise had fallen. "Someone exactly like you." before Emma could respond, the front door burst open and Marcus Vale strode in like he owned the place, flanked by 3 other men who radiated the same dangerous energy. Kieran immediately shifted, putting his body between Emma and the newcomers, his entire demeanour transforming into something predatory. "Marcus!" Kieran's voice carried enough warning to stop a charging bull. "You're trespassing." "Actually, I'm exercising my rights under pack law." Marcus's smile was sharp as a blade. "I'm here to formally challenge your fitness to rule." Emma felt the blood drain from her face. Challenge his fitness to rule? That sounded ominous. "On what grounds?" Kieran demanded. "Poor judgment in mate selection that compromises pack security." Marcus's cold eyes found Emma over Kieran's shoulder. The unmated Alpha King was a strategic advantage. The mated Alpha King with a weak human mate is a liability that puts every wolf in your territory at risk. Emma is not weak. "Isn't she? Let's find out." Marcus gestured to one of his companions, a massive man with scarred hands and dead eyes. "Thomas here specialises in extracting information from reluctant subjects. 1 hour with your precious mate, and she'll tell us everything about your security protocols, your weaknesses, your deepest fears." Emma's knees nearly buckled. They were talking about torturing her for information. Actually torturing her. "You lay 1 finger on her and I'll rip your throat out," Kieran snarled, power rolling off him in waves that made the air itself feel thick. "Exactly my point." Marcus looked pleased with Kieran's reaction. "Your judgment is compromised. You're so busy protecting your little human that you can't see the bigger picture. What happens when our enemies figure out that all they need to do is threaten Emma to control you?" Emma stared at Kieran's rigid back, understanding dawning with horrible clarity. Marcus was right. She was a weakness, a leverage point that enemies could use against not just Kieran, but his entire pack. "I won't let anyone hurt her," Kieran said, through gritted teeth. "You can't guarantee that. No one can. And the moment something happens to her, you'll be useless, consumed with grief and rage instead of thinking clearly." Marcus tilted his head, studying Emma like she was a particularly interesting insect. "Although I have to admit I'm curious about her myself." He took a step toward them, and Kieran's growl turned downright feral. "Stay back." "Relax. I just want to talk to her." Marcus's voice turned deceptively gentle. "Emma, isn't it? Tell me, how do you feel about being responsible for putting 10,000 innocent werewolves at risk?" The question hit her like a physical blow. I'm not. Aren't you? Every enemy who wants to hurt Kieran now knows exactly how to do it. They don't need to challenge him in fair combat or match his strength. They just need to grab 1 ordinary human woman." Emma's breath came in short gasps. She could see it playing out. Someone taking her hostage, using her against Kieran, people dying because she was the weak link in their defences. "Emma!" Kieran's voice was gentle, trying to pull her back from the edge of panic. "Don't listen to him." "But he's right," she whispered. "I am a liability. I would put everyone at risk." "See?" Marcus spread his hands like he was being reasonable. "Even she understands. The kind thing, the responsible thing, would be to let her go back to her safe little human life." Emma looked up at Kieran, seeing the pain in his amber eyes, the war between his duties as a leader and his feelings for her. She thought about everything Marcus had said, about the dangers she'd bring, about the people who might die because of her weakness. Then she thought about the golden thread connecting her heart to Kieran's, about the way he'd looked at her like she was precious, about the loneliness in his eyes when he'd talked about carrying the weight of leadership alone. And suddenly something fierce and protective blazed to life in her chest. "You know what, Marcus?" Emma stepped out from behind Kieran, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "You're absolutely right. I am just a human. I don't have supernatural strength or abilities. I can't shift into a wolf or fight off attackers." Marcus looked pleased, like she was proving his point. "But," Emma continued, her voice growing stronger, "I've been taking care of myself since I was 18 years old. I've survived poverty, loneliness, and more challenges than you can imagine. And if you think I'm going to let some arrogant bastard use me to hurt the man I care about, you're dead wrong." The room went dead silent. Even Kieran stared at her in shock. "I may not know anything about pack politics or supernatural law," Emma said, looking Marcus straight in the eye. "But I know bullies, and you, Marcus Vale, are just a bully trying to use fear and intimidation to get what you want." Marcus's expression darkened. "You have no idea what you're talking about, little girl." "Don't I? You're threatened by the fact that Kieran found someone who might actually support him instead of just following orders out of fear. You're afraid that having a mate will make him stronger, not weaker. And you're terrified that when I learn how to be a proper Luna, I'll see right through your manipulative bullshit." One of Marcus's companions took a threatening step forward, but Emma stood her ground, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "So here's what's going to happen," she continued. "You're going to withdraw your challenge and get the hell out of our house, and if you ever threaten me or mine again, you'll find out exactly how strong this weak human can be." The golden thread in her chest blazed like fire, and she felt something shift in the air around her. Power, recognition, the supernatural world acknowledging her claim. Marcus stared at her for a long moment, then slowly began to smile. "Well, well, perhaps there's more to you than meets the eye after all." "Emma," Kieran said quietly, wonder in his voice. "Your eyes." Emma blinked, confused. "What about them?" "They're glowing, just slightly, but—" Kieran reached up to touch her cheek. "Your grandmother's bloodline is stronger than we thought." Emma felt something settle inside her, like a puzzle piece clicking into place. She wasn't entirely human. She had just enough supernatural heritage to belong in this world, to be strong enough for it, to be worthy of it. Marcus inclined his head slightly, something that might have been respect flickering in his expression. "It seems I underestimated you, Emma Morrison. Perhaps we all did." "Withdraw the challenge, Marcus," Kieran said, his voice carrying absolute authority. For a moment Marcus looked like he might refuse. Then he shrugged, already turning toward the door. "Consider it withdrawn, for now. But mark my words, this isn't over. There are others who will question your choice, Kieran, others who will test her." "Let them come," Emma said firmly. "I'll be ready." Marcus paused at the door, looking back at her with something that might have been approval. "Yes," he said quietly, "I believe you will be." Then he was gone, taking his companions with him, leaving Emma and Kieran alone in the sudden silence. Emma sagged against the counter, adrenaline leaving her shaky and breathless. Did that really just happen? "You were magnificent," Kieran said, pulling her into his arms. "Absolutely magnificent." Emma buried her face against his chest, feeling the golden thread settle into place with perfect contentment. "I was terrified." "Courage isn't about not being afraid, love. It's about doing what needs to be done despite the fear." Kieran pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "You just proved you have more courage than most of my warriors." "So what happens now?" Kieran pulled back to look at her, his amber eyes warm with love and pride. Now we plan our future. Together." 3 months later, Emma stood at the same floor-to-ceiling windows where she'd first encountered Kieran, watching the sunrise paint the mountains gold. But everything else had changed. The woman reflected in the glass bore little resemblance to the exhausted catering worker who'd stumbled into the wrong room. Emma's shoulders were straighter now, her chin higher, her eyes bright with purpose instead of the dull resignation that had characterized her old life. She wore a simple blue dress that had probably cost more than her previous monthly income, but she'd grown comfortable with the luxury that came with being the Alpha King's mate. More than comfortable, she'd learned to use it. "The Morrison Foundation approved funding for 3 more women's shelters," she said, without turning around as Kieran's arms encircled her waist from behind. She could always sense him approaching now, the golden thread between them humming with contentment, whenever he was near. Kieran pressed a kiss to the curve of her neck, sending familiar shivers down her spine. You've been busy. Someone has to make sure all this wealth actually helps people. Emma leaned back against his solid warmth, marvelling at how natural this felt now. How right. Mrs. Chen sends her regards, by the way. She's doing much better since we got her into that clinical trial. Our mate has a bleeding heart, Kieran murmured against her ear, but his tone was fond. It's one of the many reasons I adore her. Emma smiled, remembering how terrified she'd been of the word mate just months ago. Now it felt like coming home every time he said it. The mating ceremony had been beautiful, traditional, and absolutely nothing like the blood-binding Marcus had threatened her with. Instead, it had been a celebration of choice and commitment, witnessed by pack members who'd grown to respect their new Luna despite her human origins, or perhaps because of them. Sarah called this morning, Emma said, referring to the young werewolf who'd become her closest friend and unofficial guide to pack politics. The Riverside Pack wants to set up a meeting about the education initiative. You've revolutionized how packs handle human-werewolf integration, Kieran said with pride evident in his voice. Half the Alpha Council is asking for your advice on community outreach programs. It was true. Emma's human perspective had proven invaluable in bridging the gap between the supernatural and mundane worlds. Programs she'd developed were being implemented across North America, helping young werewolves navigate human schools, assisting pack members who chose human careers, and creating support networks for mixed families. Who would have thought that being nobody would prepare me for helping everybody? Emma mused. You were never nobody, love. You just needed the right people to see you. Emma turned in his arms, studying the face she'd grown to love more than life itself. Kieran looked different too, less burdened, more at peace. The lines of constant stress had eased, and there was a lightness in his amber eyes that hadn't been there before. Any word from Marcus? She asked. He's been keeping a respectful distance, though I suspect he approves of you more than he'd ever admit. Kieran's expression grew thoughtful. He was right about one thing. Having a mate has made me stronger, not weaker. Knowing you're here, knowing you support me, makes every difficult decision easier to bear. Emma rose on her toes to press a soft kiss to his lips. We make each other stronger. It was true. In the months since their mating, Kieran's leadership had become more nuanced, more compassionate. He consulted her on major decisions, valued her human perspective, and had implemented changes that made him more popular with his packs than ever before. The pack reports are on your desk, Emma said, settling back into his embrace. 3 territorial disputes resolved peacefully, 2 new business ventures approved, and the youth programs are exceeding all expectations. What about the Portland situation? Handled. Turns out the supernatural threat was actually a teenage werewolf having trouble with first shift. I talked him through it, connected him with a mentor, and got his parents enrolled in the support group. Kieran shook his head in amazement. You turned a potential pack war into a counselling session. Sometimes people just need someone to listen to them, to really see them. Emma's voice grew soft with memory. I know what it feels like to be invisible, to feel like no one understands what you're going through. I never want anyone in our territory to feel that way. Our territory, Kieran repeated, satisfaction warm in his voice. I love hearing you say that. Because it was theirs now. Emma had claimed this place, these people, this responsibility. Not because she had supernatural strength or political cunning, but because she genuinely cared about their well-being. The full moon gathering is tomorrow, Kieran reminded her. Are you ready? Emma nodded, excitement fluttering in her chest. The monthly pack gatherings had become one of her favourite responsibilities. A chance to connect with pack members, address concerns, celebrate achievements, and strengthen the bonds that held their community together. Miranda's daughter is finally shifting, she said happily, and the Blackwood twins got into college. Oh, and James proposed to his human girlfriend. They want our blessing for a mixed marriage. You've memorized the personal details of 300 pack members. They're family. Emma's voice was firm, certain. Every single one of them matters. It was perhaps the biggest change of all, going from invisible and alone to being surrounded by people who looked to her for guidance, support, and leadership. People who called her Luna with genuine respect. People who'd become the family she'd never had. "I have something for you," Kieran said, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Emma's breath caught. "Kieran, you don't need to—" "Shh." He opened the box to reveal a delicate silver pendant shaped like a wolf mid-howl, its eyes set with tiny amber stones that match Kieran's. It's a lunar pendant, traditionally given to mark the end of the mating period and the beginning of full leadership partnership. Emma's eyes filled with tears as he fastened the necklace around her throat. The metal warmed against her skin immediately, and she could feel the faint thrum of magic in it. Protection, connection, belonging. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "You're beautiful, inside and out, strong and kind and perfect in every way that matters." Kieran cupped her face in his hands, amber eyes blazing with love and admiration. "I can't imagine my life without you, Emma Morrison Blackthorne." Emma Morrison Blackthorne. Her new name still sent thrills through her. She was no longer the invisible catering worker who'd stumbled into the wrong room. She was Luna, mate, partner, leader. She was exactly where she belonged. "I love you," she said, the words carrying the weight of everything they built together. "And I love you, more than I ever thought possible." As Kieran's lips met hers, Emma felt the golden thread between them blaze with perfect contentment. Outside, the sun had fully risen, painting the world in shades of hope and possibility. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, one of their pack members greeting the day with joy. Soon it was joined by another, then another, until the mountains echoed with the sound of their family celebrating life, love, and the bonds that held them all together. Emma had spent years feeling invisible, unworthy, forgotten. Now she was surrounded by people who saw her, valued her, needed her. She'd found her purpose, her place, her person. She'd found her home. 3 months ago she'd apologized for entering the wrong room. Now she knew with absolute certainty that it had been the rightest room of her entire life, the room that led her to everything she'd never known she was looking for: love, belonging, purpose, and the unshakable knowledge that she was exactly where she was meant to be. "Wrong room, sorry," she murmured against Kieran's lips, echoing the words that had started it all. "Right room," he corrected softly, just as he had that first night. Finally. And as the pack's howls of greeting rose around them, Emma Morrison. Blackthorne smiled and knew that finally, after 26 years of searching, she was truly home. "Where are you listening from? I'd love to know what part of the world this story is reaching. There's something magical about knowing that tales of finding where you belong are travelling to people who might need to hear them. If this story touched your heart, please let me know in the comments below. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this one, stories about finding love when you least expect it, discovering strength you didn't know you had, and claiming the life you deserve, please subscribe. Every subscription helps these stories reach more people who need them, and knowing you're part of this community makes every word worth writing.